A force greater than 1,000 dead suns reached for him. Aatrox had carried that sword into 1,000 battles. He never thought it would become his grave, but the Targonians had deceived him. The aspect of war had turned the mortals against him, and now the blade was dragging his immortal essence inside itself, sealing him in suffocating, endless dark, robbing him even of the ability to die. That's how it happened. That's how the greatest of the Darkin was stopped. Except, in this story, that pull never comes. The seal never closes, and the most dangerous being Shurima ever made stays free. So we're going to walk the real fall of Aatrox beat by beat, exactly the way Riot tells it. And at the one moment the seal should have closed, we're going to take it away. Then we follow what breaks. Because the seal wasn't just a prison, it was the only thing holding the world together. First, who we're actually talking about. Long before Desert Sands swallowed the Empire, a mortal champion of Shurima was brought before the Sun Disk. The same Sun Disk that would one day raise Azir from the dead. And in that light, he was remade. Not as a man anymore, but as one of the Ascended. His wings were the golden light of dawn. His armor sparkled like a constellation of hope from beyond the Great Veil. He was the avatar of a celestial ideal, so pure that other god warriors gathered at his side wherever he went, and 10,000 mortals of Shurima marched behind him. His name was Aatrox, and here's the part most people skip past. We don't actually know what ideal he embodied. The concept that made him was wiped from the world and from all memory. Even Riot won't name it. I'm reading that constellation of hope line as Aatrox being the aspect of hope. But that's me filling a gap Riot left on purpose. If you read it differently, the comments are yours. What we do know is that he was trusted. He was the one others followed into the worst of it. So when the warrior queen Setica called for his help against a rebellion rising in the satrapy of Icathia, Aatrox answered without hesitation. He was, in every way that mattered, the best of them. And then he went to Icathia. For generations, Icathia had been denied the gift of ascension, and so its people went looking for power somewhere else. Their mages and priests unearthed something buried beneath the city, a wound in the world that should never have been opened, the void. When Shurima marched on the rebellion, 10 god warriors led the host. Setaka was among them, so was Aatrox. They expected a war they could win, the way they'd always won. What they found instead was nothing. Hungry, formless nothing pouring out of the ground. Setaka, the warrior queen who had called Aatrox to this fight, was almost instantly ensnared. She lashed out, struggling against the writhing cords of the void with everything an Ascended could bring to bear. It wasn't enough. The power of the void was simply too great. She was lost there, in the place she'd asked him to follow her into. The Ascended drove the void back. But the cost was beyond counting, and the ones who walked out were not the ones who'd walked in. They started calling themselves the Sunborn, and Aatrox walked out of Icathia with his mind deeply scarred by what he'd seen and his golden wings gone. Then Shurima itself fell. The Emperor Azir died at the hands of the man he trusted most, and the empire that had given the Ascended their purpose collapsed overnight. No empire, no leadership, no reason left to hold the line, so the Sunborn turned on each other. They taught themselves blood magic to fuel their endless wars, reshaping their own flesh, enslaving the mortals they had once protected. And the people who had worshipped them found a new word for what they'd become. Darkin, an old Shuriman word. The closest translation we have is the Fallen. Aatrox became one of their generals, not a tyrant carving out his own kingdom. Something stranger. He commanded other Darkin to his side, trying to pull them back together, trying to give the Fallen something to be again. I'm simplifying when I call him their leader. Canon calls him an honored general trying to unify them, not their crowned king. Some of you will want to footnote that. You should. But by the height of the war, he had killed so many of his own kind that Darkin stopped being a name for a race. It became the name for him. And that's when Targon decided enough was enough. The trap. By the height of the Great Darkin War, Targon had seen enough. To the aspects watching from the mountain, the Fallen were no longer a Shuriman problem. They had decided the Darkin were as dangerous to Runeterra's survival as the Void itself had been. And the thing about Targon is, when they decide something has to end, they don't fight it head on. They outthink it. The plan came from the aspect of Twilight, a host named Maisha. And if that title sounds familiar, it should. Maisha is the aspect that now lives inside Zoe. Same trickster spark, just a few thousand years apart. Maisha gave mortals something no mortal army could have found on its own, the knowledge of how to trap a Darkin, not kill one, trap one. and the aspect of war rallied them, gathered the mortals who were left, the ones whose homes the Darkin had burned, and turned them into something that could stand on that field. So they did. Mortal weaponsmiths, working from what Maisha taught them, forged the means to bind a Darkin's essence into the one thing it never set down, its own weapon. Aatrox met them fearing no foe. He always did, and he realized only too late that he'd been deceived. A force greater than 1,000 dead suns pulled him inside the sword he had carried into 1,000 battles, and bound his immortal essence to it. The weapon became a prison, endless dark, no escape, and worst of all, no death. Canon calls him one of the first Darkin ever sealed this way, which means every imprisonment that came after was built on the method that worked on him first. That's the moment. That's the single moment we're going to take away. So picture it again. Aatrox on the field, the trap closing in, but this time he sees it coming. The deception doesn't land. The force reaches for him and closes on nothing. And the greatest of the Darkin is still standing, sword in hand, surrounded by mortals who just watched their only plan fail. The seal that was meant to begin a chain of imprisonments never forges its first link. The seal wasn't a wall, it was a thread, and we just cut it. So what breaks first? It's not what you'd expect. The first thing to break is the sky. To understand why, we have to go back to that phrase from the trap, the newly reborn aspect of war. Riot chose those two words on purpose. Newly reborn, because an aspect of war already existed before this one. And it was dead. Here's the rule you need first. An aspect isn't a person. It's the living embodiment of a concept. War, twilight, the sun. And the rule that comes with that is brutal. It is almost unheard of for an aspect to truly die, because when one does, the concept it carried can be torn out of reality with it. Aatrox killed one anyway. In the war, he didn't just fight the aspect of war, he slew it, not the mortal wearing it. The aspect itself, the celestial thing behind the host. The man inside Atreus survived that. Barely. By nothing but sheer mortal will when a god should have died and taken the very idea of war down with it. And this is the part that matters. Atreus, having survived, became the new aspect of war, the newly reborn one. And it was that reborn warrior who gathered the mortals, stood beside Maisha's trap, and brought Aatrox down. In canon, the rebirth and the sealing are the same chapter. The being Aatrox had already killed once is the being that finally caged him. There's a grim symmetry to it. The thing he destroyed is the thing that ended him. Now take the seal away. Without it, there is no victory for that rebirth to mean anything. A free, unweakened Aatrox is never brought down. The one power that could have organized the world against him won its rematch and then watched the prisoner walk free. And worse than that, there's now no proof the trap even works. No rallying victory, nothing for the next generation to build a stand on. The mortals threw everything they had at the greatest of the Darkin, and he's still standing. War, as a force that could ever gather against him again, effectively stays buried with the aspect he killed the first time. I want to be clear about what I'm doing here. The rule about aspects and concepts is canon. This outcome is me following that rule to its end. I'll keep telling you which is which, because here's what's left. Atreus does still become Pantheon. He carries a spear that can kill aspects and kill Darkin, a weapon that works like the world ender itself. But it's one spear, one mortal, against a god who has already proven he can outlive the heavens. Aatrox didn't just survive the war. He outlived the one thing built to end it. And here's where it gets really interesting, because a free Aatrox should be impossible to begin with, the thing that should have faded. There's a problem with a free Aatrox that almost nobody talks about. By the time of the war, he shouldn't have been able to exist at all. Go back to what a Darkin actually is. When an ascended is made, a celestial concept merges with a mortal body. That concept is the thing holding them together. But the Darkin lost theirs. The ideals they once embodied weren't just forgotten, they were erased from reality. And here's the strange part. The thing that keeps a concept-erased Darkin from fading into nothingness is being sealed. The prison is what anchors them in existence. Sit with that for a second. An unsealed Aatrox, his ideal already gone, should logically come apart. He should unravel. He doesn't. And the reason is blood magic. Hemomancy isn't just a weapon for the Darkin. For Aatrox, it's a replacement. It's the thing he uses in place of the celestial concept he lost. He holds his stolen flesh together by killing, by consuming, by feeding the magic that keeps him coherent. So follow that through. The seal was never what kept Aatrox in existence. The seal was what made the endless feeding unnecessary. Caged, he just endures. Free, he has to feed forever, or he dissolves. and he will feed forever. Now I should be straight with you, because this is where I'm leaning hardest. This fade without the seal rule is something Riot has stated but never actually shown on screen for any Darkin. I'm building this whole video on a confirmed rule that's never been filmed. I think that's fair. You tell me, but Aatrox isn't the only one still free. Zolani is too, the Bloodweaver. While Aatrox feeds to survive, Zolani does something worse. She puppeteers the bodies of her own kind through blood magic, bending other Darkin to her will to end the war her way, through total servitude. So now you have two crusades left standing. Aatrox, who wants everything to end. Zolani, who wants everything to kneel. And all of Runeterra caught in the space between them. If you've played the Darkin saga in Legends of Runeterra, where this exact fight plays out, Riot's confirmed that's not canon. So I'm not building on it. We're staying with the rule, not the card game. For Aatrox, the seal was never the punishment. It was the rest. Free, he doesn't get to stop. And that Darkin who taught Vladimir blood magic, in our timeline he's never sealed either. Which is where the world you actually know starts to disappear. The world you know never happens. Up to now, this has been about Aatrox. But the seal didn't just cage one Darkin. It was the first link in a chain that pulled every other Darkin off the board. Take it away and the chain never starts. So let's follow what disappears. Start with the Darkin who taught Vladimir. In our world, that Darkin master is eventually dealt with, and Vladimir turns on him, kills him, and absorbs his power. That single act of blood magic is the seed of everything Vladimir becomes, and a thread that runs all the way into the Black Rose and the rot beneath Noxus. But if the Darkin are never beaten, that master is never sealed, never weakened, never vulnerable. Vladimir may never get his moment, and Noxus, as you know it, may never come together at all. Then there's Demacia. Aatrox raided its earliest days, and in the stories, he was turned back by Kael's fire and Morgana's chains. But in our timeline, there was always something waiting behind that fight, a world where the Darkin could eventually be stopped. Take that away, and Demacia's founding as a refuge behind Petrosite walls is suddenly anything but certain. And then Ionia. Centuries later, a surviving Darkin named Zahen allies with the Kinku Order and shows them how to defeat his own kind. Together they seal Varus, Rost, Pra, and Solani across the First Lands. But none of that happens if the Darkin were never defeated and scattered in the first place, which means no scythe waiting for Kain, no bow in the well at Palace for Valmar and Kai to find, no Nefiri waking up inside a pack of Dunehounds. The champions you load into a game don't exist in the forms you know them. Quick one for the lore deep among you. That old story that a golden-armored warrior queen of Valoran sealed Varus, as of Zahen's release in late 2025, that's been retconned. It was Zahen and the Kinko. Riot's own champion page still hasn't been updated to match, so if you learned the Queen version, you're not wrong, you're just one retcon behind. And the version of all this where Zolani wins instead, where servitude beats annihilation, that's genuinely its own video. Let me know in the comments if you'd want me to run it. But none of these wars get to finish, because something older is coming back. Oblivion, on schedule. Here's the thing about what Aatrox actually wants. He doesn't want to rule. He gave up on ruling a long time ago. He can't free himself from the blade and he can't destroy it, so he arrived at the only answer a prisoner that desperate could reach. If he can't end himself, he'll end everything. Drag all of creation into one final apocalyptic war until there's nothing left, including him. That's his goal in our timeline, even sealed. So set him free and you've simply handed him the means. Free, Aatrox gets exactly the war he was reaching for. No aspect of war left to truly stop him. No seal to fear. Just centuries of slaughter with nothing on the board that can end it. But here's the part he never accounts for. The thing the Ascended were built to fight is still out there. The void at Acathia was never a single war that ended. It was a wound that never closed. And in this timeline, there's no Ascended host left to hold the line when it opens again. None freed. None surviving. All of them dead or feeding. So Aatrox does get his oblivion, just not by his own hand. The Void returns to a world with no defenders, and it swallows everything. Aatrox included. Before his own war is even finished, he spent an eternity trying to end the world. In the end, the world ended without him, and even that, it took from him. So that's the quiet thing the seal really did. It didn't only cage a monster, it bought the world the time it needed to grow up. Time enough to raise the heroes who'd be standing when the Void finally came back. Take that one moment away, that single trap closing at the right second, and Runeterra never becomes the world we know. It just gets quietly, completely unmade, Every champion you play, every region you've ever read about, sits downstream of that one seal. The Darkin War didn't just end an era, it made room for the world. If you'd like the full story of Zahan and the King Ko, the Darkin who sealed his own siblings and then asked to be sealed himself, let me know in the comments. Riot's sitting on that one, and it deserves telling. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to everyone subscribing and to the channel members keeping this going. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.